Alrighty, GM everybody. How are we doing today?
GM Humpty, what's happening? I'm doing all right.
Good, man. Doing pretty good.
GM, Humpty and Donny. How we doing, everyone?
Polaris, what's up?
I see the surprise face on Donnie's avatar, and I'm like, oh, here we go.
Am I missing
It's
the
been a long
joke?
time.
Am I missing the silent joke here?
What silent jokes?
No,
You
I just
haven't been
haven't
here,
seen you
man.
in so long.
Oh God. Nice to see both of you. And what I've done is I've re-strategized my entrance. So the mobile data, I switched it off, and so hopefully we're not going to have any like technical issues in this conversation. You know.
Oh yeah, I like that. You know, I keep saying this, but I really should buy like a little secondhand. I'm always afraid of buying secondhand technology just because I'm afraid of what somebody might have put in there. But I need to buy an inexpensive phone so that I can log in with my personal account. Because I think that I like the idea of being able to draw more attention to the space, and I know our personal accounts also tend to have their own audience. So maybe I'll do that this weekend. I'll find like a little $100, $200 phone or something.
You know, I was just I was going to message you before this and offer to host the space, but I didn't know if it was just another message that would be annoying because I did buy a Solana phone. You know, the Saga phone that
Oh,
Solana released. I bought one of those for the sake of I think there's a Sybil element to it, and they're working it into future airdrops. So I'm kind of speculating on that. But it also came with $5 a month unlimited talk and text with a separate phone number, and it has its own data plan. So like I can use that from anywhere. It's really not a bad idea, but the phone did cost $1,000,
cool.
so kind of a wash maybe.
Man, that airdrop better pay off.
So far, it's been about 350, I think. I got to mint a Claynosaur, which it's like a cartoon dinosaur thing, and I sold it immediately and just put it somewhere else, I guess.
Okay, can
Not
we
that that's the point,
can we
but
talk
it is.
about this? Because actually, you're bringing up a really good point. And here we go. Thursday talks for anybody who's new here.
It
We
happened.
we normally like just talk. Donnie Polaris and myself, Humpty, Data Dude. We talk and we discover topics that are fun and interesting, and then we like dive a little bit more. You just said something here, Donnie. I really want to talk about that because this is something that is I'm really passionate about. And for anybody who's following my personal account, Data Dude, you might have seen that I keep talking about loyalty rewards. It's this idea of like, the next evolution of loyalty rewards. Whereas, in previous, I guess Web two, current, not previous, because Web two is still prevalent, it's still the standard. Um, you accumulate these points. You trade in these points for usually crappy rewards, things that you don't really care about. It's very hard to actually get anything of value from these things. I mean, I'm even saying this as a travel credit card holder and redeeming them for points, or sorry, airline tickets, etc. I mean, there is value in that, but for the most part, they're pretty worthless. So you said something now that I thought was really interesting, and I wonder if you wouldn't mind deep diving into that, your thoughts on the matter, and then Polaris will get your thoughts. And that is, you have this phone, right? Whether they you get an airdrop or not, it's speculating, whatever, degen. You got the ability to mint this NFT, which let's just say you got $300 out of it. It's $1,000 phone. You can consider that a rebate. You got a $300 rebate that you immediately applied to the cost of your phone, and now that phone costs $700 instead of $1,000. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, don't you think? I mean, I think that's kind of the future of like loyalty rewards. What do you think, Dottie? Since you're the one that got that, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that this phone is just another method of airdrop farming in a way. And I think that in the back of my head, I have friends who airdrop farm like full time, and I'm dispassionate about it because I don't necessarily fully see the point of it sometimes. But in this case, it's a phone. I need a second device. And here's my justification for this specific instance. And then I'll talk about what I think about the whole thing, maybe. But the phone, I needed a second device anyway for secondary storage of Google 2FA info, because I don't want that just on one device. And I don't want to store the private keys anywhere digitally or write them all down because it's crazy. So I just have two phones that do that. And if I'm going to have two phones, I may as well make one of them a separate platform, so it's an Android, because I like to be diverse. I'm not on Team iPhone or Team Android. I like to see what everybody's doing, and I wanted to see what they were going to do in terms of airdrops. And in this case, there was that one thing that was claimable that ended up cutting out about 33% of the cost of the phone. But to get $5 talk and text unlimited only because of this phone is also a huge benefit. I don't know, man. It seemed like, and I didn't know I was getting this. Also, if you share your location data with it, it pays you, I think it's like $2 a day. So by getting the $5 a month data plan, you end up making about 25 more dollars just by carrying the phone around, which I'm already doing, right? So like if I'm already going to be doing these things and someone's offering to pay me more or at all for doing them, I'm going to do it. And I like on a fundamental level, I don't really have to think about that. If I did think more deeply into it and consider what I was giving away to do that, and if I'm already not giving that away, what I want to start necessarily, I don't know. And if this was any other way of airdrop farming where you just sort of like use a protocol and test it and try to break it and, basically provide professional level QA to a company that they then reward you in their token for, I wouldn't want to do it unless it was something I really cared about, really wanted the protocol to succeed. And sometimes I don't have the time to look into it. So I think that's like everything I think about airdrop farming.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think at this point, um, airdrops have been historically kind of a degen tool. Um, I think there's this. I think the premise of airdrops as an onboarding mechanism is great. My problem with that is it's just kind of like a blanket airdrop. You don't really know who's truly cares about your product, like you said, right? Like you don't care if the protocol is great. You don't care if it succeeds. You just want your tokens to be able to sell them. And at the end of the day, that's also kind of not a big deal, I guess, for a protocol because they're like, hey, it becomes liquidity, so it doesn't matter. Like we win either way. Somebody keeps the tokens, they become a part of our ecosystem. They use our platform, we win. They sell it, it becomes a part of liquidity. Now we have liquidity in the market, we win, right? But I think that there's more to it. Maybe maybe I'm overthinking it, but I think that there's a lot more to airdrops as a incentive mechanism. Polaris, what do you think, man? And I guess from this lens of loyalty rewards, rebates, whatever you want to call them, using like NFTs, crypto.
I think it's a very interesting question and a topic, uh, which is, I think, a pretty major part of the crypto ecosystem. Especially if you think about how many people got onboarded in 2017. It was like airdrop mania and ICO mania at that point. But there's a lot of different aspects to it, and let's let me try to break those aspects down from my understanding. So we've got like you know aspects of like people actually experiencing what that specific blockchain has to offer. Uh, so that's a good way of like incentivizing individuals who are already within that ecosystem, and we haven't really got that many. If you look at the total global population and the crypto users, so it's a good way of like using their technological understanding of this specific industry and utilizing that, and maybe getting some information out from like uh, the feel of what that blockchain can actually do, uh, because at the end of the day it's just a blockchain. Like unless someone's going to use it So that's a good aspect, that you literally getting people in and getting them to use it. Then you mentioned something about liquidity, and like liquidity is created, and then people, I'm not sure. The thing is that like liquidity is gets sucked from somewhere else, and then it gets like shifted from one side to another, and hence, but then through the passage of time, like whichever technology or whichever blockchain tends to like have more users, that's where the liquidity tends to stay. It's a good way of testing, like uh, in in a wild environment, like which would work best for the users. So it kind of like places the users, but it also damages the current liquidity, and from the projects. But one can argue that like maybe the projects haven't been delivering, and because of that delivery the liquidity has been sucked out and going to the technologies which probably could do things, and that, I suppose, is innovation. So yeah. um, i just I just thought, like give a more holistic perspective of it. And in terms of like users and then they being incentivized, I mean that's been happening. We realize, like especially in the last 20 years or so. I would say like web 2, or that era where like Twitter and all these, Instagram and all these different apps came, before we was using MySpace. I think like the next generation of MySpace. uh, I think at that point, companies and business schools, because they literally taught me this as well in a business school, that they realized that in order to, the most difficult part of a business or to like create profit is to like retain customers, and to like attract customers, and there's different strategies which are placed to like get them. So um, so they literally like teach like individuals that, and they realize like that paying the, or incentivizing users to like do marketing on their behalf, or to like use the product and like say something about it, that became the big thing of for this millennia so far. And surely like the blockchain industry can capitalize on that. In return, they deliver insights, which are very useful for the businesses to like make the right direction. What I don't agree with or don't like personally is the fact that that information gets used or gets like not stored correctly, and then ends up getting into the wrong hands and all of that stuff. But yeah, that's my overview on it, Humpty.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so you said a few things, and maybe we could just backtrack a little bit. The first thing is you you used kind of traditional social media as an example of maybe potentially leveraging airdrops for onboarding people to use those platforms. And I want to use specifically the Twitter and Threads recent, I guess, news, right? In terms of like, I guess, Threads vampire attack on Twitter, if you will. In fact, I think I tweeted something like that when it happened. I was like, if this were Web3 apps, it would basically read, the headline would read something like Threads vampire attacks Twitter, right? Because basically they were scraping their API data to, I guess, if I understood it correctly, to attract or to get people from Twitter over to Threads. That was one. The other thing is you talked about onboarding mechanisms, so customer acquisition and customer retention. I think I really want to talk about that because you're right. I mean, in traditional business, those are two of the hardest and most expensive things to do is targeting your demographic, understanding who they are, going where they're at, creating some sort of like value for these people to join. or use your product, and then to then find value from that product and keep using it, right? The third one, and I think I actually already forgot the third one. So let's just go with the first one. What are your thoughts in terms of like, let's look at it from the lens of like Web2 social, right? So Twitter and Threads. What are your thoughts of like how those two products, if they wanted to, introduce a token that they could use that in order to attract people to use it, retain those people, like basically incentivize them to continue using it, and then to basically, I don't know, I guess vampire attack, for lack of a better word, their competitors' users. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. It's very
Totally.
interesting. Donnie, go for it, bro.
Yeah, mine's really short. I think Twitter did introduce a token. It's called the US dollar, and they pay you now for impressions. You can engage in profit share. And a lot of my friends are making like pretty reasonable salaries off just doing this normal shit posting that they were doing before. Not really even adding much value, just kind of like churning through, asking those questions that get people fired up, you know? And Threads is doing what I would consider to be the opposite, which is taking the super low friction free method and collecting people's, basically doing what Instagram does and allowing you to sign in through all the things you normally already have to a service that's kind of like Twitter, but is zucked out a little more. You know, that's my take. I don't even know if Threads would need to tokenize or monetize it because it's already free, and they don't need the QA. They don't need people to test the system out because they're, you know, they're who they are, right?
I like how you just basically shilled your own Twitter thread where you were talking about like USD as a, I guess the USD and the government being as
Oh,
the
I'm
DAO
not
and the
making
token.
anything. No, you have to apply for this. You have to get like a million or 15 million, some crazy number of impressions that I will never get
Yeah.
because I don't ask questions that get people fired up. Because you have to do that on purpose or be Dwayne Johnson or something. Like you have to be someone
No,
who just
I'm gonna
gets
call
that kind of
BS on
attention.
that.
I
No,
mean,
I think it's
dollars to
you
donuts
just need
though.
to you need to grow your audience. You need to have a point of view, and I think Donnie, you're doing both. So
Well,
I'm
maybe I'll
just
get
gonna
there
like,
someday. I'm
yeah, I'll
certainly
tip
not
my
making
hat
any
to
money
you. I
off it
think
though.
no, but I'm just saying like I do remember you writing that thread is what I was alluding to, where you talked about
Oh,
like
right.
the US dollar being like a token, and now you kind of like full circled it. You went full Seinfeld,
Yeah. So
where
the
they
funny thing
come
is
back to it.
that the other platform we were talking about is called Threads, and I misunderstood what you were saying.
Oh
I get
yeah,
it
no,
now.
sorry. I sometimes do a terrible job of introducing my thoughts too. So,
No, Mark Zuckerberg
um,
should be sorry. This isn't you. You didn't name a company after an action that its competitor company performs.
oh
That's
yeah,
crazy.
I see. Yeah, sorry. Well, you know, I mean that obviously was intentional. Come on now. Come on. Like we know threads are synonymous with Twitter see now I said Twitter. And it's not even Twitter anymore anyways, it's
Man,
X.
it's not tweet, it's post. I can't get. I know I'm having a lot of trouble with that
I'm
too.
okay with post. Actually, I don't have a problem with post. I think I've used that word before. Um, but X is just such a stupid name. I'm sorry. I know we're on the platform, so it's kind of ironic that we're shit talking it, but you know, it's a stupid name. Polaris, you were gonna say something, man. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, in terms of, I think Donnie answered it. Like, Twitter's already using all of that. They're using USD to monetize and incentivize. Their next move would be like they've already, like, the X has already got like a huge user base, and it's already got like it's a machine of content creation, and it's been there for a while now. It just needs to, like, have blockchain integration. That would be the next step, in my opinion, and then start, like, uh, utilizing the security which blockchain offers. But apart from that, they've got like pretty much everything going on for them. And I can understand the confusion with the threads and X thing, because I mean we're still getting used to like calling Twitter X. But it's It's a hard one, because it's like an ever-changing environment. We're like, constantly experiencing different innovations coming through and testing. Um, but it hasn't really impacted like the users who are using X in terms of they're still creating content. Um, if if a token was to be created just for the sake of like incentivizing creators, uh, that could possibly move in a I don't know. I mean, why would you create a token when you're already incentivizing them to use uh, X and you're paying them in USD? But it would be a
No,
bet.
I think yeah, I think Donnie hit it. Donnie hit it pretty good, basically saying there's no need, right? In fact, anything they're adding a level, they're adding risk, which they don't need to do because they already proved that they're able to capture that value with USD. If you
Yeah,
introduce a crypto token, now you're looking at regulation, now you're looking at volatility and speculation. Like there's a whole bunch of other things that you got to worry about that no longer are to do with like the main product.
yeah. I mean, also, I mean, if X was to like literally use the blockchain aspect, they would they would. My recommendation would be to like literally use the tech tech aspect of blockchain and like digitize everything on the blockchain if it is possible, and secure the user content, or go around those lines instead of like literally creating a token which doesn't really like make any like difference. Especially like Elon, he's all about like trying to like help humanity and make this world a better place. I'm sure like along this, along these lines would be a better rhetoric for him to follow.
Well, I think the world, and by the world I mean a very small part of Twitter, but the world was expecting him to introduce Dogecoin because wasn't he such a Doge maxi? Like, I think the world was like, what happened to Doge? Isn't that supposed to be introduced into X? I mean, who knows? Might be in the roadmap, but go ahead,
I
Donnie.
bet I would imagine that there are not enough of the influencers. I mean, crypto Twitter is pretty big, but it's a really small portion of what Twitter, sorry, X, crypto X is really big, but it's a really small portion of what X business is. And if you're trying to get people to spend $11 a month with the hopes of making money, a lot of those people won't have a crypto wallet or a Doge wallet. And I think it would be segmenting their uh, user base a bit more than they ought to. Also, if I think one of the main benefits of airdrop farming for companies that are startups and need QA, they need users to try to break their systems. It's expensive to pay a company to try to break your system. So this could kind of function like a free pre-audit because you're giving people a token you made. So it really doesn't cost you anything to get these like massive amounts of people to utilize your systems. And that's really not what Twitter's going for. Twitter's basically turning Twitter into a casino where like if you're willing to pay $11 a month, you might be able to make a lot more than $11 a month, or you might not. But then you get to use the service.
So yeah, let's jump back into that a little bit more in terms of like loyalty mechanisms, crypto NFTs, and all that. Let's look at it from the lens now of like decentralized social. So there's a couple of examples out there. There are, I guess, some of my favorites like Farcaster, Lens, which these are protocols, but there's apps that are built on top of it, like Warpcast and Orb. Then there's like some of the more novel social experiments. I guess I should call them social experiments instead of decentralized social because they don't all necessarily fall under the same umbrella. But I guess one of the more novel social experiments has been Friendtech. Um, are should we expect that in the future, because we're talking about vampire attacks and onboarding and retention mechanisms using crypto, should we expect that in the future then we will see a ton of different applications that are constantly like forking and each other and vampire attacking one another for their customers? Like, is that what the world of like social will look like in Web3?
I don't know if there's enough. Okay, so my initial thoughts on this, I haven't thought about this before, so this might be a little bit juvenile, but my initial thoughts are that the Web3 space and the blockchain space
Those
are
are
so
my favorite
young that
thoughts
it,
of yours, by the way.
well,
Juvenile
great.
thoughts.
And maybe this will be something groundbreaking because it's really not super well thought through. It's like it's more of a monkey urge. Um, we are monkeys after all. We are the fourth great ape, hominid. We the blockchain space is really young, so it's easy to edge out the competition and try to gain market share because all you have to be is scrappy and noisy, and people will quickly shift attention. And everything's like even Bitcoin is a pretty small market cap, despite being the largest, either largest minority or the vast majority of crypto in general's market cap, right? So it's pretty easy to edge other people out. But in the social media space, there are giants, and they're pretty well founded, and it's going to take a lot more than a startup that's a bit noisy and is farming an airdrop to suck any liquidity or social liquidity out of a pre-existing dominant app, I think. So I don't know how this plays out 10 years from now. I think the scene will look a little bit different, but I think one thing of the million things that start up will just all of a sudden gain market share for some reason by solving a problem we didn't know we had. But I don't know if it's going to look the same as the blockchain space because it's older than that.
Yeah, I guess I'm not necessarily asking like how would Web2 companies, like well-established social companies like X and Threads or I guess Meta in this case, um, compete in the Web3 space, because that would assume that they adopt the technology. And I think every paradigm shift of technology creates new kind of institutions. Many of the old institutions just die because they're too slow to adopt the technology. I'm not saying that that's true for all of them, but it tends to replace kind of the previous status quo. And I would consider blockchain to be kind of like a paradigm shift in technology, where there's going to be new players that become the institutions, the Amazons, right, the Metas of the future web. Um, so my question was more so these what are now social experiments become these social institutions of the future. Are they going to be vampire attacking each other because of these incentive mechanisms being so easy to spin up and people's attention, I guess, to borrow from some of your words, kind of being so short, where like if you're just loud enough and scrappy enough, you can get people to buy into whatever it is you're doing.
I guess that's kind of what I was trying to say. Maybe I said it in the wrong direction. I think as
Maybe
companies
my
and
monkey brain
markets,
is way too monkey this morning.
yeah, maybe we're both just different kinds of monkeys today. I think that
I'd like to
as
think I'm like an orangutan, but whatever.
yeah, I was thinking what is the one that's bonobos? Those are the ones that are closest to us. I like to think I'm one of those, but
Oh
that's
yeah, wait, no, yeah, orangutans are apes. They're not monkeys. Okay,
I
sorry.
think that it is up to others to say it's like calling yourself handsome. We don't get to decide where we fall in the spectrum. I think other people get to. Anyway, when a business sector and its components get bigger and bigger and bigger, I think it's less easy to vampire attack one another. So I feel like it's so much easier when market caps are small and businesses are young to do this to one another because you're all scrapping over the same few pieces. But as these become larger financial institutions, I don't think they move the same way.
Okay, that's a fair point. Because I mean, I would say Uniswap is probably one of the more mature DeFi ecosystems. And while they themselves were vampire attacked early on, right? Like the whole sushi swap being born of that, and then providing the token first to their community. I think that was a good example of like a vampire attack. While I wouldn't say that sushi doesn't exist, but not at the same level as Uniswap. Now, that is subjective, but I think there's some objectivity to that. So I like that point where you get to a point of sophistication and maturity where you are sufficiently established where it's a little more difficult to just say, I'm going to try to steal your users with a new token. There's something to be said about the security and the feature set that makes it that much more difficult to copy and replace. Good point. Awesome. Love your monkey brain thoughts. Polaris, any thoughts on that? You got a frog brain, I know.
Bro, the thing is that you gotta let innovation take its course sometimes. and eventually the best technology, sustains itself, and you can tell that from the user growth, especially in blockchain. You can tell from on-chain activity, and all of those things. uh, they tend to like stand as a testament as well towards um, the blockchain's validation, because in the end it gets validated by its users. And the same approach with, like, the way you said vampire attack sushi, because there was a space, or there was an area which Uniswap didn't cover. As a result, sushi swap took the market share from that side. And yes, they're not the same size as Uniswap, but it's a big world at the end of the day. And if they're a player in this game, and if they keep working towards innovation, then who knows? Uh, Literally, like last year, 16 months ago, Solana, Avalanche, Luna, all of these different blockchains were at their maximum, at their peak. Who would have known that, like, two of them are literally at zero at the moment? Uh, but even in a non-financial aspect, like, we need to look at like how many users are using that blockchain for the way it was designed for. And then I suppose that kind of like sheds some light on the question. But the answer is I mean, there's no answer to this. It's like a long-winded understanding of the situation and coming up with a catharsis, which is an ever so it's a moving catharsis. You know, it's a crazy, crazy industry.
Interesting. Okay. So are we putting a period on that? Do we want to explore it any further, or anything in the news that we want to cover next?
It feels to me like the speculation on where this might go and who can partake in it is as far as we can go without getting a time machine. In my head anyway. Um, yeah. Next up,
What's going on in the world, Donnie? Polaris? What have I missed?
dude, my world. I don't know. Yes, it's funny how I just
You
made the
should
world
hey, you
mine.
should show your spaces, man. Wow, you're doing great.
Dude, these has been such a hoot. Actually, there's one tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, um, and I'm really pumped about doing it. This one's going to be on collectibles. And the approach that we've taken it's sort of from the Bitcoin ecosystem's perspective, because the majority of the participants who are on the panels are in that ecosystem. But it's not about Bitcoin, it's about digital assets in general, and kind of like anthropologically what we were doing when we're doing it and how it falls in line with what humans have done and might do in the future. So the first episode was an intro. The last sort of will be a 50,000 foot perspective of where we're at. And all the 12 in between are labeled things like reputation, identity, collectibles, on off chain, deep diving one subject at a time. And the last episode is going to be me. I'm making my wife and mother listen to all of these and take notes on them. And the last episode is going to be me interviewing two normal people who don't have any seed phrases stored. They don't have any wallets that require seed phrases. My wife has some amount of XRP in Coinbase, so she's gotten that far. My mother has a Coinbase account too, and she holds a little bit of Bitcoin, but only because I made her do it, and I made her do it at the top, just like everybody else. And she hasn't looked at it since. So we get to go back through 15 or 14 episodes of deep diving what digital assets are to us and what they might be to us in the future, and how we've done the things we're doing now in the past without digital assets. Because we're really just redoing everything we've ever done as a civilization or as previous civilizations, but with new technology, and like it all looks different. It's reshaped a little bit. So we get to ask two normal people what they didn't get about it. And I'm assuming it's going to be a lot, uh, because I always forget how insular this entire community is. No one I interact with on a daily basis would have any idea what I'm talking about. This is like speaking a totally different language. And I think we forget that. So my mother specifically is coming up with a glossary of terms that she doesn't understand. And we're just going to bang through a lot of that stuff. She's going to send me a list in advance so I can just fly through it. But then we're going to have like an hour or 90-minute long discussion about what's keeping them out of it. And preliminarily, I don't think that this is going to be about why they don't buy NFTs, because that's really not the point. The point is not to get my mother and my wife to buy NFTs, because that's like trying to get my friends who aren't into Magic the Gathering to play Magic. Because there's different kinds of people and they're going to do different kinds of things, right? But my mother and my wife both do have bank accounts. So why do they not want to engage in a monetary system that isn't the major one yet? Is a big question that I have. And I think I already know the answers, but I want to hear what they say, because I don't want to tell them why they're not doing it. Because from my perspective, it's a very different thing. So that's my short and long shill for the Don't Say NFT podcast. And it's called Don't Say NFT because of the stigma around NFT, or the word NFT. It was like a political party at the top last time. If you asked a stranger on the street what they think of NFTs, they would either get super mad about it, or they would be like, they're cool. I like monkeys. Everybody had this, like, I think it's calmed down a lot. People just aren't saying NFT anymore, but like, not only is it a joke about the negative perception of the word NFT, despite the uneducation, or maybe because of the uneducation around it, but also because ordinals, the Bitcoin versions of NFTs, are really not NFTs. While Satoshis are non-fungible tokens, the packet that contains the inscription or allows it to be movable is a packet of non-fungible tokens. So it's like nitpicky, but it's a funny joke if you're on the inside, kind of stupid if you're on the outside, I guess.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I'm a fan of what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, actually. I should say that I'm a fan of what you're doing. One, you're taking a very academic approach to the conversations that you have. I for one am not a great writer. I try to encourage myself to write more every day. I'm a fantastic reader and I'm a great speaker, and I can say that about myself confidently, both because I've been doing it for a long time, but also because others have said it. So there. Um, but I love that you have taken it upon yourself to do some level of research, write it out prior to going into the conversation, the podcast that you're recording, and then, or the space that you're recording, and then actually host it, and then get new perspective. I think that's just really cool. And so that's one. But what I really wanted to touch on was you're doing the work that is absolutely crucial, which is you're studying the customer base that hasn't adopted the technology yet, right? If we talk about the adoption of Web3 or whatever this ends up being called next, right? Because I was here when it's being called blockchain, then eventually crypto, and then, on chain and Web3, like whatever. It just keeps changing the terminology, but it's the same thing. Um, we talk about that adoption, but we it's hard to take that next step because there's a huge group of people that this is not at all either within their radar or interest. And why? It's a lot of different reasons, but you're taking up a segment of that market and you're saying, hey, I have this content, I have this research, I want you to read it, I want you to listen to it, and I then want you to come to me with your own thoughts and beliefs as to why this still doesn't make any sense to you, or why this makes more sense to you now, but what your choices to do in the future. I am really excited about collaborating with you on this because I think that there's an opportunity here to take this and build something even bigger, which is going to be massively helpful for the entire industry. And I speak in large terms because we're way too early for there to be these gatekeepers of like information and research, and I think you're definitely moving the needle forward, and I appreciate you for that.
It's all I can do. Like, if I'm going to spend so much time thinking about this stuff and have gone through dumping all of my time and energy into, not in a negative way, in a good way, into studying what blockchain is and how it can solve problems we have and how it creates new problems that we didn't think about really out of these problems that we're solving. Like it's sort of it's sort of a net neutral at the moment, where self custody also implies no insurance, which is like,
Hmm.
which one do I want? I kind of want both right now. I don't really want to move fully over to Web3 stuff. So if I'm going to spend all this time asking these questions and having conversations about it and dumping money into NFTs and being in and out of communities and all this stuff, like it'd be kind of a waste of time if I didn't somehow try to spark that conversation to move forward. Otherwise, what was it all for? It was like shouting into a vault that no one else is in. Where we don't move forward together that way. I think the only way that anything moves forward is when people share ideas and team up. That's actually what I think this episode is going to be about. It's about collectible, and I'm not trying to show this. I think this is really relevant, honestly. This episode is about collectibles, and it's not about collectibles like what you should buy or shouldn't buy or how you can go about doing that. It's about why we're inclined to even collect things. And I actually pinned the article up at the top. I think it's the second thing in that I pinned. But I can summate it for anybody who doesn't feel like clicking and reading it. It's I'm here to posit that we collect things to varying degrees. Some people don't collect anything and they think it's stupid, and other people are hoarders and will collect literally anything. And there's a whole grayscale in between that of all different kinds of people. And the diversity guarantees that any tribe size over the course of our genetic history would have people who hang on to things just in case we need them. Also, people who travel super light and don't hang on to stuff. But everybody in between marks themselves by collecting jewelry and tribal tattoos, let's say, couches, art, whatever. So, like, we were always inclined, even before we were a sedentary species, we were always inclined to decorate the things around us. And I think that not only helps us navigate the things that are the space that's near us, whether it's a permanent or temporary home. Because, like, when I move from apartment to apartment, I move my art because it doesn't feel like it's my place unless I bring my things. I can live there, but that's not enough for me to feel at home. And I didn't decide that. That's like somewhere deep inside the back of my brain. So I think it helps us mark the space around us and mark our bodies for when we go out, say, hunting or gathering or to a party and there's 250 of us in this tribe. We know who's in our tribe based on what they're doing because they do similar things to us. And even more important, we know who's not in our tribe and what space does not belong to us because it's been marked separately by other people. So if that's what this is, that's the itch that this is scratching. It's a primal itch that we can't fight, and there's nothing we ought to fight about it. We should just acknowledge this and move on with good intent, I think. So that's sort of what the article's about, and that's what tonight's discussion is going to be about.
Yeah, and do think of me when you do that reputation one, because I think that that is definitely something that I'm very much interested in and have worked in the past. So,
I've already
uh,
got you slated on that, and during
oh, okay, good.
tonight's space, I'm going to release the tweet that introduces who's probably going to show up for the next one. I'm going to pin it up at the top so everybody can see it. And the reputation one, oh yeah, I want to put out one line of preview for the reputation one. I came up with a formula for reputation, and let me see if I can remember it. It is identity plus perspective times time equals reputation, because reputation is who we are or continue to be or change into based on a particular viewer's perspective over the course of some period of time. And that's what the next article in space is going to be about while you and I hopefully talk about this.
That's interesting. I mean, that's an interesting formula. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just kind of unpacking a little bit what you mean by perspective, because uh, would you say that reputation is something that you control or something that outside of your control?
I think so. The episode that was last time was identity, and the one that's next time, not today, is reputation. And because I explored identity so much, I realized that identity is internal and it's who we want to be, it's who we think we're showing ourselves
Hmm.
as. Where reputation is not, has nothing to do with any of that from our perspective. It's fully from the outside, the observer's perspective. And not just the observer's perspective, but the observer's lens through which they're looking. Like
Hmm.
the difference between being a bank or a friend. When you're a friend, you're looking at trust and social capital. And when you're a bank, you're looking at prudence and reliability. Those are, but you're looking at the same thing. You're just seeing different things.
Hmm.
So I think reputation's fully based on the observer, and from when they start and stop viewing you, there's like a data set that they have to work with
Right.
their own set of criteria too.
It's interesting you say that, right? Because not to get too deep, because I definitely want to encourage people to go and check that out. These are really wonderful conversations. But seeing as how ontology is involved with both identity and reputation technology, I think it's worthwhile just to kind of unpack that a little bit here. I think one of the things that I recall when we were building Orange Protocol, and for those of you who don't know, Orange Protocol is built on top of Ontology's identity Legos, right? So OntID, OScore, their decentralized identifier standard, and their credentialing, or I guess, yeah, credentialing protocol. Orange Protocol basically leverages both to generate some sort of like earned reputation based on activity. One of the critiques, because I want to say that Orange Protocol was early in that space. Um, Certainly, I think we saw a lot of competitors enter the market once we had built our concept, and then I think we moved much faster than many of them at one point. Um, there was this critique, though, prior to that, that reputation should be self-owned, that no one else should be making any claims on you based on, that could affect some sort of like credit worthiness, if you will. Um, and that's an interesting position, I guess. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that it's interesting when you think of like reputation from that definition, that it's something about how someone views you from their perspective, that actually is, sure, anchored to your identity, but not within your control, the same way that you can create a new identity or identify yourself differently in different communities. Um,
In the article that I wrote about this in advance, which I did already,
yeah.
I explored deeply, and this was my first time really getting to this point. When you frequent a restaurant and you become a regular and you begin to get benefits because the staff knows you, you've earned the
Hmm.
reputation with them, and that restaurant burns down, you have to go to another restaurant and you have to start over, which means you
Hmm.
don't get to take it with you when you want to. And conversely, when your credit score goes down because you screw up on your bill pay, you don't get to shed that when it's convenient for you. So in both situations, you're kind of like negatively impacted by that. But I think as we enter the digital asset space, we may be able to choose a little bit more when we hit the reset button and go back to zero. Like, if I go to jail or prison or whatever the proper word is, and I come out better, am I not now given a chance to be better because everyone thinks I'm going to be bad? Would it not be beneficial for everybody involved, not just the guy who already served his time? He did what he was supposed to do for the crimes committed. Should he not come out with a totally clean record, but it's now a zero? Because having a zero credit score is similar to having a bad credit score, but it doesn't carry with it the negative connotations. It just shows that you haven't yet proven that you were good. And I think that's sort of what you're referring to, where like
Hmm.
it's not that it's fully up to the observer to make your reputation, because maybe in some ideal world, you get to show them a particular spot of your identity, whether
Hmm.
it's a constrained time or a constrained version. It doesn't have to be all the data all the time. And it's not. Like when I go to a restaurant,
Sure.
I behave differently than I do at a funeral.
Hmm.
But digitally, we don't have that luxury at the moment because we only have one government ID and we can't detach from it. So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in there, and I don't think that my thoughts are fully fleshed out on it, but that's what I've gotten through
No,
so
no, no.
far.
I think you hit it. You hit it pretty well. I would say the parallel would be the example that you use in terms of like presenting yourself differently to different groups in the real world. So when I go eat out at my favorite restaurant, I might be one person, whereas then when I go to the gym, I might be a different person than when I go to temple or church or wherever you go, your place of worship. I might be a different person, and then eventually when I go out, uh, dancing with my friends, I'm a different person. I don't Doesn't mean that I'm a different human, right? And that my core values have changed. It just means that I'm presenting myself differently. And in the Web3 space, uh, that would be synonymous to you creating multiple wallets and using each wallet, obviously never mixing them, because once you mix assets between wallets and they're connected, but if you have these distinct identities, you can, yeah, thanks for the 100s because people forget that. I don't know why. Um, come on, you can't have anonymous identities or pseudonymous identities because there's no anonymity if you're doing that. But anyways, if you have these separate identities and actually using one right for being a NFT collector, using another one for uh, being, using DeFi protocols for trading, so you're a trader, and using another one for being a governor in DAOs, like these are all different personas that you've chosen to, you know, present yourself as through these identities, and they still remain separate. But it doesn't mean that you as a person using these wallets, these accounts are any different, but you've been able to separate these identities. So yeah, I think that's really rad. I think you made that point very clear. Polaris, did you want to add anything? Frog got your throat.
I've been
That joke of the day.
that was a good one, bro. Perfect
Oh,
timing as well.
you know me, man. I love that you're like all frogged out, dude. Honestly, you're as frogged out as Donnie is. I don't know, whatever weird
I'm also frogged out,
heads.
man. I'm loving frogs. I wrote a
Are
thread about
you?
frogs. Yeah. Did you see that
Sure. I
Pepe
mean,
thread?
I've seen you like repping more ordinal stuff, and none of it is bad, by the way. I love it all. But I've seen you repping more ordinals. Like for me, Polaris is more synonymous to the frogs.
Yeah, I'm still trying to like circumvent my direction, because it's been a crazy journey. So yeah, I'm all frogged out and waiting for for, for the next step really. But in terms of NFTs, and I was really enjoying the conversation, by the way, and well done, Donnie. For starting this school of thought and conversations. I think they're very important. And as far as what the industry has in place, I mean, we're going through a huge restructure. I feel it feels like the whole industry, the NFT industry, the DeFi industry, all of it is going through a huge restructure. I think like when the FTX collapsed and before that the whole Luna aspects happened, I think that was a huge restructuring aspect for DeFi. And then there's a lot of stuff which is happening in the industry, NFT industry currently as well, which would eventually determine in what direction we uh, you know we move, or like what kind of like norms for the industry needs. I think that we're in that developing stage at the moment, and hence you see um, as they say, bloodshed on the streets, and it's causing a lot of. But we are here. We are here. We're trying to we're still having conversations. Still trying to find um, the logic in 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 what we're doing. And as far as collectorship is concerned, I mean, I totally agree with what Donnie is saying in terms of we deep down inside have got that yearning to collect and personalize things. From an NFT collector's perspective, I think that the industry hasn't really truly paid homage to that hunter gatherer collector, you know, and there's been like a lot of issues uh, which would which would which would cause problems. Like for example, you know, we still haven't really hit that complete forte of owning a digital asset to an extent that some people question that if you're like holding an NFT which is stored on IPFS servers, are you really holding that NFT? And there's a lot of conversations regarding ownership. And then once you do own an NFT, there's a there's lots of conversation. I've got friends who are like specialist IP lawyers working on these active issues in LA actually, and Yeah, there's a huge element of ambiguity there. Um, that what does the intellectual property actually um, gives the individual? What can you use it for? And yeah, and I'm not very pleased with the current status of the the way things are going. So yeah, let's see how things are. Hence me being frogged out, if that makes any sense.
I think
That always makes sense.
there's there's been a lot of talk about the intellectual property rights of assets lately, and it seems to me if you're going to buy, like, let's say you buy a Mondrian or original Mondrian painting, like one of those color blocks things, would you want to start a business based on that? And what would you make T-shirts out of it? Like, how have we ever used intellectual property rights in the past before digital assets were a thing? And why is that such a conversation now? Why does anybody want to start a brand around owning a Bored Ape Yacht Club? Like, what if the Yuga team does something not synonymous with your values? You're leaving so much of your own thing in someone else's, you're like your own persona in someone else's hand at that point. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I think it's a weird thing that we're focusing on right now that we've never really even questioned before.
Ooh. Okay, I kind of, man, you dropped this gem like with 3 minutes to go, and I do mean 3 minutes to go because I got to jump exactly at the top of the hour. But I really want to pull on this thread so
I
bad
thought it was
because
30 minutes left. Holy, how did this happen?
well,
Wow,
we're having a good
we can
time,
put a
man.
pin in it for next time too, though.
No, we should because 100%. That's a great thread to pull on because, well, first of all, I think brand building is always like has always been a thing, and I think if anybody is not thinking about their personal brand, you're in the prehistoric ages. Like everyone needs to build their personal brand. A lot of that personal brand is about your identity and your reputation. It is as interesting as that is, right? Like the identity that you create around yourself, and that could be I am a threader on X.com or I'm a trader, on Uniswap. Like these are your identities, and how you share this information, how you wrap that identity, whether that is through threads, through trades and whatever on social media, and the reputation that you earn then based on that becomes your brand. And again, people will say that brand isn't something that you control, it's actually what people think of you. So I think brand could then, based on that definition earlier, it could be synonymous to your reputation. um, I would say using a PFP as your brand is could be a great thing. Like, you can build an identity with it. But you just kind of threw a bomb there and then walked away casually saying, "Hey, what if that collection as a whole did something bad? Is your brand then negatively affected because the image is associated to a whole, or is your image kind of safe because you've developed something unique and valuable and respected, separate to the other, assuming everything is a 10,000 collection, the other 9,999 PFPs in that collection. Dude, that just reminds me
So
of that like image, that meme of that little girl who's like smiling when the house is burning down. That's
I'm just going to
literally
put
what you
this
just
here.
did.
So I'll keep this 10 seconds. We talked a lot about this a couple of episodes ago on Don't Say NFT. One person uses their own face. It's me. I know me. I'm specifically accountable for my own actions, and anything I do, it's my problem. If I sully my own face, then whoops, I did it. If you have, let's say you have an Azuki PFP and they do something you disagree with, you can change it and you can rebrand yourself in minutes. It's like getting a haircut or putting new clothes on. It's really not that big of a deal. But if you're asking questions like IP, are you trying to trademark that as your brand logo that's permanent? Boeing can't just change its logo every year or 6 months. That's crazy, right? But if you have an Azuki and it goes through heck and back and it's high and it's low, and you keep it through all of that, there's a different kind of perception that is made from that fortitude that people will see you differently aside from the project because it's like you subsisted totally independently from it. So we had a lot of conversations about this the other day, and I don't know what the point of any of it was really, except that now I feel like I have a little bit of a better grasp on how we define ourselves and how people perceive us over time and instances specifically.
Yeah, the one PFP that comes to mind, and I guess I'll say this and we can close out. But I know there's this character in the CryptoPunks. He was one of the first apes, before apes existed that created a brand around that. It's a beanie ape, and is now synonymous with who he is. Like it's almost separate from the entire CryptoPunks community, which to me that's actually quite interesting. That something that I guess connected to something else can become separated and unique. So bravo on that. Good job, Donnie, on bringing that up. Let's definitely pull on that thread. But now that we're definitely past the hour, any last words before we hang up?
It was just thanks. Thanks for hosting. It's been a pleasure.
Yep, it's been a fantastic call. Thanks, Donnie, and thanks, Humpty. Take care, guys.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We'll be back next week. Bye bye.